Hello everyone and welcome to my Observers Vlog series. My name is Alicia Mohammed and I have completed my observation as part of my practicum experience in a preschool classroom. Currently, I have completed 2 weeks of my practicum, and during this time, I had the opportunity to observe children within their natural learning environment and gain a deeper understanding of their development. For this assignment, I focused on observing 3 children, each within a different developmental domain. These included language development, social and emotional development, and cognitive development. In order to collect my data, I use a variety of informal observation techniques that are commonly used in early childhood settings or in the classroom. These included a running record, event sampling, and an anecdotal record. Each method allowed me to gather different types of information based on the focus of the observation. So throughout this vlog, I will be discussing each child individually, outlining the observation process, the techniques used, and the insights gained from each experience. I will also highlight the strengths and limitations of the observation methods that were used. So I would like to say that this experience has allowed me to better understand how observation and assessment can be used to support children's development in a meaningful and practical way. So I hope you enjoy and gain insight from my observation. So for my first observation, I looked at a child who I'll refer to as Anna. She is a 4-year-old girl in the preschool classroom that I did my practicum at, and she has been in the school for almost 2 years now, since she began when she was only 2.5. I carried out this observation on Tuesday, 10th of March at around 8:15 a.m., which is just before school begins officially at 9 a.m. For this observation, I decided to focus on her language development. So basically, I was looking at how she communicates, the kind of vocabulary she uses, how she expresses herself, her thoughts, her feelings, and how she interacts with others such as her peers, the other teachers, her friends, and me through language. So this observation took place mainly during a general interaction. So this was when she arrived at around 8:15, and our school begins at 9 a.m. So during that period, we do individual work where we revise the ABCs, the numbers, the colors, the shapes with them, doing individual work. So, and that's also a time where general interaction is done with the other students and they will just freely talk. And to collect my data, I used a running record. This is a type of narrative observation where you would write down everything the child says and does over a short period of time. And it's commonly used in early childhood settings because it gives a very detailed picture of the specific child behaviors and their interactions. And I chose to use a running record for Anna because she is very talkative and I wanted to capture her speech and her interactions as accurately and correct as possible. So I felt like this method would actually allow me to do that, to see how she uses language in a natural setting. And while observing her, one of the first things that I noticed is that she's extremely expressive and communicative. Like, she talks a lot and she is always eager to participate in conversations. And what stood out to me the most is that her vocabulary is quite advanced for her age. She speaks in a way that almost sounds like an older child, and from what I understand, she is surrounded by older siblings at home, so that most likely influences the way she speaks. And another thing that I noticed is that she asks a lot of questions. She's very curious and observant. For example, she would ask things like, "Miss, why do we have to wash our hands?" Because I let her eat a snack, but her hands wasn't that dirty. So I told her, "You still have to wash your hands." So she was asking, "Miss, why do we have to wash our hands? It's clean." And then after, I gave her a craft to color in red. And she asked, "Why do we have to use red? I want to use pink. Why do we have to use red?" So she was not just following instructions, she's actually trying to understand like the reasoning behind them. And she also pays attention to small details. Like there are times where she would notice things. Like today, I did not wear my bracelet like I wore it yesterday, but she noticed that and she asked me why I didn't wear it on. So she's very aware of her surroundings and uses language to explore that. However, while her language skills are strong, I did notice that she interrupts others when they are speaking. And this happened both with her peers and even when I was talking. So while she is confident in expressing herself, she is still developing important communication skills like turn taking and listening. In terms of limitations, one challenge with using a running record is that it can be quite time consuming because you're trying to write down everything as it happens and you might actually miss some behaviors while focusing on recording like the other ones. But overall, this observation gave me a really good understanding of Anna's language development. It showed that she has strong expressive skills, she has a natural curiosity, but she is still developing some social aspects of communication. So for my second observation, I observed a child who I will refer to as L. She is a 3-year-old female in the preschool classroom that I did my practicum in, and she is a fairly new student as she began at the beginning of this new term. This observation was conducted on Thursday, 12th of March at approximately 11 a.m., which is during lunchtime and playtime activities. For this observation, I focused on the domain of social and emotional development. So this area looks at how children express their emotions, interact with others, and develop independence. Now, this observation took place during lunchtime, which is also time for free play. And this allowed me to observe both her emotional responses and her interaction within the classroom environment. So in order to collect my observation data, I used event sampling. Event sampling is a method where specific behaviors are recorded as they occur. And it's commonly used in early childhood settings or classrooms to track behaviors such as social interactions or emotional responses or reactions. I chose this method because I wanted to focus specifically on Elle's emotional responses and her social behavior during key moments throughout the observation period. And during this observation, I noticed that Elle displayed some emotional responses during transitions and interactions. For example, she became upset when there were changes to her usual routine, such as when another child sat in the chair that she typically uses. She cried. I also observed that she prefers to work independently. So during lunchtime, I offered my assistance to help her eat her mac and cheese. But she indicated that she wanted to feed herself and she was successful in able to do so. And this shows a level of independence and confidence in completing tasks on her own because she was proud of it. However, in terms of social interaction, I observed that during playtime, she did not actively engage with the others. And when her peers encouraged her to play, she remained by herself or she stayed close to me or the other teachers rather than joining them. And I also observed and noticed that she became upset when other children interacted with her belongings, such as when another student picked up her lunch kit, she started to cry and she reacted not nicely, even if it was just to assist her. And these observations suggest that while she is developing independence, she is still building her social interaction skills and learning how to manage her emotions in a shared space. In terms of limitations, one limitation of event planning is that it only captures specific behaviors at the moment that they happen or occur. As a result, it may not provide a complete image or picture of the child's overall development, since other behaviors outside of those recorded moments may not be involved. Overall, though, this observation provided useful insights into Elle's social and emotional development within the observed period, particularly her independence and her responses to social situations. For my third observation, I observed a child who I will refer to as me. She is a 3-year-old female in the preschool classroom that I did my practicum in, and she's almost 4. This observation was conducted on Monday the 16th of March at approximately 10 a.m., which is during classroom learning time. For this observation, I focused on the domain of cognitive development. Cognitive development refers to how children think, learn, solve problems, remember, and basically make sense of the world around them. And this observation took place during the structured learning time, and this allowed me to observe how she thinks, remembers information, and applies what she has learned in different situations. Now, in order to collect my observation data, I used an anecdotal record. An anecdotal record is a narrative observation method that involves writing a brief description of any significant behaviors or any learning moments. And this type of method is normally used in the early childhood setting or classroom because it allows the observer or the teacher to actually capture some meaningful examples of how a child thinks or learns. And I chose this method because I wanted to focus on specific moments that showed May's cognitive abilities, such as her memory, her reasoning, and her problem-solving skills. During the observation, I noticed that May demonstrated strong memory and thinking skills. For example, during the classroom activity, she was able to recall a previous lesson that involved macaroni and spaghetti, and she made a connection by identifying both as pastas. And she even described it by saying that pasta has a family, which shows her ability to categorize and make sense of information. And I also observed that she is very curious and she frequently asks questions about what is happening in the classroom. Such as before we started, she was asking, what are we going to do today? What activities will be done on that day? And that shows her interest in learning and understanding her environment. And in addition, during the literacy activity during that period in time, she was able to remember and apply a strategy that was introduced to her, which was involving sounding out letters using a visual aid. And it was to say the sound of the letter, such as on, and a little ladybug is on the letter O and it's traveling to the letter N, so it's saying on. And she successfully used this method to help her form the simple words and actually read, so that demonstrated her ability to retain and apply new information. And all these observations, it suggests that May is developing strong cognitive skills, particularly in memory, reasoning, and problem solving. In terms of limitations, one limitation of anecdotal records is that they are subjective, as they are based on the observer's interpretation of the events that happened. And also, they may not capture all behaviors, since they are only focusing on specific selected moments. But overall, this observation really provided valuable insights into May's cognitive development, and particularly her ability to recall information, make connections, and apply the learning in meaningful ways. So as I conclude this vlog, I would like to say that this observation experience has allowed me to gain a little bit more understanding of children's development across the different domains. And it also highlighted to me the importance of using appropriate observational techniques to actually get meaningful information about each child. But overall, this experience has helped me to better appreciate how observation and assessment can support teaching and learning in the classroom. And I thank you for watching,